YouTube, welcome back. So, right now, last week, as a recap, I self-published a book called Dream Catalyst. It's available on Amazon, link in description. So, I've been posting my audiobook every week, so I'm assuming if you already kind of know about that, you're here to listen to Chapter 3 today. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to videos on my channel, and you'll see that I've been posting a free audiobook version of my novel so that you guys can all see it on YouTube. And you can start 2 weeks ago. I published a video where I read Chapter 1, and last week I did Chapter 2. So this week we will be reading Chapter 3, which is Tornado. So if you have the book, it's on page 44. If you don't have the book, then just listen along. Okay. So, Chapter 3, Tornado. Quote, I suppose my fairy is a saint, for I forgot to believe in her today. Again, V. Perspective of the narrator. This is a romanticized catastrophe, and it is a chapter that V wishes she could forget. Worry not, dear reader. This time she will not go through it alone. First, let us define a tornado in its true definition, and then by the way that V defines it. According to Merriam-Webster, a tornado is defined as a violent, destructive, whirling wind accompanied by a funnel-shaped cloud that progresses in a narrow path over a land. The definition of a tornado that pertains to the context of this particular story, however, differs slightly. A tornado to V is defined as a destructive, natural, and unexpected life event that is thrust upon an individual when they must re-examine their destiny. V, an optimist, is not as naive as she may appear. She borrows others' beliefs and considers them carefully before she rejects them. If she cannot reject them, she adopts said belief as her own. She learned from realists that we must all manifest our own destiny. Though substantial time bracket has passed since V's conversation with realists on that day of transparency, the conversation briefly came back to her mind on the evening she shook hands with a natural disaster. Altercations ensued, and it was catastrophic. The great force knocked V to her feet. She did not know it at the time, but the disaster inflamed a fire in her. She was enraged by the wind, but she does fight against it. She wins. What one often forgets about a tornado is that it is nothing more or less than a circumstance. To the sun, it is just the wind throwing a temper tantrum. The wind will be soothed in time and life will prevail. Things will be lost, others will be broken, but this is only to make way for the strongest to grow in its place. Nature is funny like that. It kills the weak in us and replaces it with strength. This tornado was necessary. Before it, V lived a very mundane life surrounded by complacent company. Her former company slept with their eyes open during the day, and not in the romantic sense like the way the wake dreamers would dream their realities to life. No. These open-eyed sleepwalkers wanted nothing more than to stay sheltered and cozy in their tiny homes. V lived in the future, almost to a fault, but the people of the land of tornadoes and turmoil lived in the past, and to their detriment. A tornado required V to adopt realist ideology as her own. While V, under circumstances, carefully deliberates every decision she makes, in the night of the tornado, she makes a hasty decision, one that alters her life quite significantly. Sometimes, one needs a tornado to elevate themselves to the sky. Without her tornado, V might never reached the heights that she does. Watch as V rides her tornadoes to the stars. I am an artist. Back to V's perspective. I am an artist, I thought to myself. I was wake dreaming in a place I shouldn't have been. Likely a grocery store or a parking lot, somewhere mundane and irrelevant to the story. Here in my wake dream, I considered the concept of art. Why was it glorified by some and mocked by others? It seemed to divide a modern society into two, those who could see it and those who could not. Most people liked the idea of an artist, and they liked the idea of art. But once one had to adopt an artist as their own, be it their child or their parent, the realities of the artist will lose its romanticism. It takes a special kind of person to care for an artist. It is usually another artist. While every person was born an artist, some will lose it. Time withers it out of them, like a candle's flame when it fizzles out. When no one reignites the artist's wick, and they refuse to reignite it in themselves, that artist loses their flame. They become ordinary. There is nothing wrong with ordinary. The ordinary choose tranquility, and still, there is nothing wrong with tranquility. I laughed to myself as I considered the irony of an artist's life. While the artist is often the most sensitive amongst us, they are subsequently made a point of mockery most frequent in the wrong crowd. This is especially true when artists live among the shrinkers. A shrinker is a nickname I assign to those who mock the artist. When shrinkers fall, they blame the artist. Shrinker believe that there is something to fear in the artist who fears conformity, I thought to myself. Back to the narrator's perspective. V is fully aware of the shrinkers in her life. There were the people among her who were so small in size they clung to the artist among them. Show me beauty, they would demand. Amuse me. Be my comic. Be my jest. Be my source of entertainment. However, what shrinkers secretly craved was for the artist to show them the beauty of life. The shrinkers had forgotten it a long time ago, but they knew the artist among them never did. Addressing the shrinkers is not V's job. She would prefer to disbar them from her narrative entirely, but she decides to mention them briefly. This is because, at one point, she was surrounded by so many shrinkers that they temporarily consumed her. Do not worry, dear reader, she wins in the end. She will provide each with a definition, nothing more than a few lines. These shrinkers took up only a fraction of life, and therefore will only take up a fraction of her story. Shrinkers, V's definition. A group of impertinent individuals who presumptuously overstep the bounds of others to compensate for their own insecurities. Codependent to the artist for their source of joy, they often enable insecurities within the artist. Shrinker number 1, the pretentious. According to Merriam-Webster, the word pretentious is defined as expressive of effective, unwarranted, or exaggerated importance, worth, or stature. Lee defines this as the person who spends their life attempting to impress with their own self-perceived scarce accomplishments. Accurate or not, this person believes themselves to be unsuccessful and wants no one to know. This particular antagonist was a lawyer who called Lee several names including disempowered, spoiled, and a brat, all because she exercised her independence. Often shouts for compensating for not knowing what to say. This particular lawyer envied the artist because she pursued her passion instead of law school. The Joker. Prejudiced and ignorant, this Joker pokes fun at the artist for her occupational pursuits. He calls her ugly, stupid, and talentless, among other things. He then hypocritically asks her on a date. They don't go. The bystander. These are the shrinkers who enable other shrinkers, followers to a fault. They are not bold enough to insult the artist, but they are also not brave enough to stand up for her either. The gossip. These shrinkers hunger for love, and so they feed on delicious lies. Eventually they overindulge. The repressor. They believe themselves to be inferior to those around them, attempts to alleviate this burden by verbally attacking those of substance. They seem impressive from a distance, but by incessantly attacking others, they deface their own value. The prejudice. These are the sexist, racist, homophobic people who state obtrusive statements for shock value. They do this because they are subconsciously aware that they are uninformed of culture and art, but they do not know how to communicate this due to their own stupidity. They are the lowest amongst the shrinkers. Bee has already defeated the shrinkers in her life, just as a ghost hunter would kill their demons. These shrinkers equipped her with the tools she needs to overcome the tornado. While the tornado tries to kill her, it only elevates her high above the ground dwellers beneath her. Bee is now ready to touch the stars. As unfair or evil as the shrinkers may seem, they are not the true antagonists to this tale. It is both complacency and indifference that play the villain in V's narrative. The shrinkers can do nothing more than push V to her self-defining destiny. There is one more type of person that should not be forgotten. If complacency and indifference are the villains, then it is the dream catalysts that play the hero in this and perhaps all stories. Dream catalysts. These are the muses, the lovers, the poets, the dreamers, the musicians, the painters, the impassioned. They are the beings who live with the sole intent of pushing others to achieve their destiny. Dream catalysts outnumber shrinkers. For even one dream catalyst has the power of 1,000,000 shrinkers. Dream catalysts are diamonds. If you do not believe me, look into one's eyes. Only then will you see how brightly they sparkle. Dear reader, V and I will meet. Until then, let us watch as she lives. After stargazing at the ravine one night, I strolled home to retire for the evening. It was a windy night. The skies were dingy and dark. The wind was acting out as a child might when they do not get their way. The breeze spiraled around my core. It teased me by whipping my hair into my eyes, blindfolding me as I walked home. The wind chilled my spine and tossed leaves and rocks toward me tauntingly as I trekked through it. I knew better than to provoke the wind. It was nothing more than an agitated breeze, and it would calm itself back down to tranquility by tomorrow morning. I clambered up the sloping hills to the cul-de-sac with the yellow house I knew so well. A cul-de-sac was a synonym for a dead end or a blind alley. This seemed quite frightening and fitting for this particular neighborhood. When I arrived at the porch, I reached for the handle. It was unlocked for my return. I entered and walked to the kitchen. I planned to grab a snack before bed. The wind rattled the sides of the house. I looked to the kitchen window and saw leaves smashing against the glass. The winds are agitated tonight. I thought to myself, what happened to them? They seemed so unnerved this night. This was not the first time the wind became aggressive, especially this season, though tonight, I had to admit, something did seem quite different from the previous nights. That the wind howled itself into a storm. I sensed frigid air leaking through the cracks through the window pane. I tried not to pay the tempered wind more attention than it deserved. It would pass. I walked to the fridge and grasped the handles. I pulled it toward me and peered inside. "Did you buy a book on the credit card?" barked an aggressive voice from behind me. I turned my attention from the fridge. I was greeted by a drunken man who stood behind me. That man was my father. Now I understood the warning from the tempered wind that slammed against the walls of the yellow house. It was not screaming at me at all. No, it was trying to warn me. "Pardon?" I asked the aggressive being. He angered and slurred his words. I could not tell if he was drunk or not, but I noticed something different in his demeanor. Something in him had snapped. In fact, I believed that something had snapped within him a long time ago. "Did you notice a book on Amazon?" screeched the disheveled man. I tried to recall at that moment what book he was referring to. Oh, yes, I did know now. I had purchased Charles Dickens' Bleak House from Amazon. I used my credit card, the one with my name engraved on the front. My sister and I had gotten in the habit of making small purchases when a place would only accept credit card. When we made the purchase, we would each transfer back the funds to our parents. Zeal charged the card more frequently than I, but Zeal was not in strife with my father. I rejected complacency and ignorance, but this agitated him, who accepted conformity mindlessly. A shrinker who battered the artist. A shrinker who rejected art. "Yes," I replied honestly. "It was $7. I charged the card. I'll transfer you back as always," I replied coolly. "Give me the card," he screamed. "You stole my credit card." I was taken aback by this severe and entirely false accusation. The card had my name engraved on it. I owned the card. How could I have stolen it? I had no time to explain that. I did no such thing. I had no time to defend myself and bring up Zeal, who frequently paid for dinners with the card, while I paid from pocket. Tried to explain a professor recommended it before the summer break, stating most Harvard undergrads would attend lectures on that novel solely. I tried to explain that my brain was my home, and I wanted to ensure it was well decorated. I desired to fill her with knowledge and experience, and I saw no fault in my action, as I was given verbal permission to use the card when necessary, as long as I paid back my dues, which I always did. "This is not the first time you used the card," he screamed. "You used it for an Uber in Toronto." "That was the night a man chased me in the downtown," I shouted back. "When I was attending a workshop, my mother told me I could use the card for emergencies." Did that not constitute an emergency? I thought to myself. I would not have to pay for an Uber at all if it were not for the sexist society that the men like my father helped to perpetrate. He did not respond to my outburst verbally. Instead, in a drunken and disgraceful state, he grabbed my shoulders and shook me violently. "Give me my card," he screamed back. "It's not your card," I spat. "Don't touch me." I shoved him back. "You have no right to touch me. No one does." This statement only enraged the tornado within him. He grabbed me again and shook me harder than previously. He wound back his hand into a fist. "This is why Zeal is my favorite," he shouted. He said this once before at dinner. The same dinner he smashed a plate into pieces. The same dinner he called me several oppressive, disgraceful names. The very dinner he spat that we deserved to be treated poorly by men if we did to them what my mother did to him. My mother interrupted him once. This sent him into a frenzy. The wind in him was tempered, just as it was in the car ride. I almost jumped out from a moving car. The car he sped down the highway in an untamed, uncivilized temperament, when I stood up for my mother, yet again, as he screamed at her impatiently. The same car ride I demanded I be let out of the car, demanded he pulled over. I felt unsafe, to which he told me to shut up, and refused. I felt safer hitchhiking to the bus terminal that day with strangers who paid for my ticket. The man whom I used to call my father was filled with rage. He was verbally abusive. My mother suffered the abuse most frequently. That was only until I turned of age that I felt confident enough to stand up to her, for her. I remembered him punching walls and doors. I remembered picking him up from neighbors' garage parties completely wasted. I was reminded of him muttering sexist phrases, and I was reminded of him teasing my mother and me for menstruating. We were moody and irrational. Despite the verbal abuse, until that night, nothing became physical. But the man whom I used to call my father held his fist above me. He was prepared to punch me, and I was preparing myself for impact. Just then, my mother ran downstairs. She shoved my father and stood between the two of us. "Vi," she said coolly, "go to your room." I stood there in shock. I walked briskly to my bedroom. I requested months earlier a lock be put on my door, to which my father abided and installed it. I felt unsafe in my own home. I felt unsafe because the wind was inconsistent. Some days it was a breeze, others it evolved to a storm. Tonight, it was a tornado. It seemed a point of irony that the book I had purchased was titled Bleak House. It fit the natural disaster that ensued this evening. "Stupid bitch," screamed the drunken man. "That is not my name," I spat from the staircase as I trekked to my bedroom. How could I be called stupid when I was nurturing my mind with literature, while he was filling his with hate? How could I be called a bitch when he was the one who urged the tornado? "No," he mocked, "your name is Volatile. A volatile, stupid bitch." "That is not my name," I repeated, teary-eyed. I was tired of the wind's gossiping about me, gaslighting me, convincing me that every person has a different truth, but that mine was somehow always wrong. Mine was always the lie. I had enough of the tornado shaking the yellow house. I locked the door behind me and cried. In only a matter of moments, the house, that just moments ago ruptured into a frenzy, was now called to silence. The wind had stilled themselves, and the sky was dark. A cloudless, but still somehow starless night. When I felt the stillness of the yellow house, I ran down the stairs to the bicycle that leaned against the front porch. I mounted the bike and rode it to the ravine. Perspective of the narrator. The drunken man who Vi once called her father was the one shrinker who Vi was not sure she would ever be able to forgive. He was an aggressor. An aggressor is a type of shrinker who was once filled by art and dreams. Earlier in his life, he might have been considered a dream catalyst. a person who would attend his daughter's concerts, a person who would motivate her to push past conformity. The world was rough to this particular individual, and he caved beneath the cruelty of it. When the wind is violent, a person has one of two choices. The first is to grow from the storm. V chose to have the wind mold her into an empath. The second choice a person was left with was to let the storm define them. This was the decision of the aggressor. He became aggressive and craved control because he felt weak in life. When V's father finally realized he would be able to control, he would never be able to control V, he began to bully her, abuse her, because he saw something in her, and it agitated him because he did not recognize that fire in his. The wind currents had been building to this day. Shrinkers were like prescription pills. Pills could be deadly, but only if all taken at once. V does not consider her father evil, but she was wronged by him. Because of this, now V is alone. Do not worry, dear reader. I will meet V tonight. Perspective back on V. The wind picked up around me, and the sky was spitting in my face. Rain droplets attacked like bullets, and I felt alone. I was safe at the ravine now. I looked to the sky. There was no visibility tonight, despite being cloudless this afternoon. I wished I could have seen the stars. I needed them tonight. I looked to the water that gushed beneath me. Why was my family against me? I was their own blood, and yet they hated me. Teardrops mixed with raindrops. Why do they reject me? Why does the artist pay such a steep cost at the expense of others' sanity? Why are you caught crying? Called a soft voice from behind me. I turned quickly to see who it was. A woman my age. She was beautiful and unfamiliar, a stranger. I was tempted to run from her, but her eyes just looked too damn familiar. It's nothing. I'm just moody. Turned my gaze back to the water. It can be therapeutic to talk to strangers about your problems, you know, the woman pressed. I was taken aback by this. When other strangers heard my silent tears, they turned from my gaze. It was uncomfortable for them. I decided to tell her. I had a hunch she may not leave me be until I did. My mind traveled back to the car ride. Once I bussed home for 3 hours with no money. I rode passenger seat in a stranger's car. They took me to the bus stop. I was greeted by my friends on my arrival. They drove me from the bus stop to a party. Oh, yes, I guess they did, I thought back to myself, remembering the group. Maybe they weren't all shrinkers after all. I returned from the pause I deviated into thought from and continued my story. My father was screaming. He insulted my mother while driving. He put his foot to the gas and accelerated the car. I asked him to stop. I had asked him to stop multiple times. He refused. Instead of pulling over, he sped quicker. I asked him to pull into a gas station, explained my rights as a passenger. And I explained I felt unsafe. He said no. My mother and Zeal told me to shut up. They were afraid. When we got to the destination, I left. I was called so many names. Melodramatic, crazy. I had anger issues. I was a bitch. I was stupid. Every name in the book. When I told anyone, they would laugh. They said if I went to the police, they would laugh at me too. At times I wished that others could read my mind and feel my pain so I would not have to explain it to them. I wanted to be read, to be understood, but people don't like dirty laundry. Is that what happened tonight? Asked the woman. No, I said. Something like it did. I looked over the ravine's edge. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be a river, I told the woman. Always flowing. Currents, sharp rocks, it just flows through them. Obstacles mean nothing to the river. Why do they matter then, to me? Can I tell you a story? Asked the woman. It will help to clear the storm. As she said this, perhaps by coincidence, the darkness subsided. I looked to the once starless sky and saw the stars emerging. They winked at me and urged I hear the woman, so I nodded. There was once a group of chameleons who adopted a caterpillar. They liked the caterpillar because she would blend into the leaves of the trees. When she cocooned herself, they liked her even more so because she became a part of the tree. A master of disguise, they thought. All the years of her childhood, the caterpillar thought she was a chameleon. When she awoke from her slumber, the chameleons gathered to see her. Out from her cocoon emerged a butterfly, and she was beautiful. Vivid in color, she had a grand wingspan and was marvelous design printed on her wings. It was as if her new, thinned body was draped by a ball gown of fine and delicate silks. However, the chameleons were not impressed by her new form. She no longer possessed that skill that they idolized in her. She lost her ability to hide in the trees. They convinced her to cover her wings in mud. She refused. She complained it would restrict her ability to fly. The mud would weigh her down when she wanted to soar. The chameleons persisted anyhow. They told her she was a disservice to them. They feared she might attract predators to their home. The caterpillar stated she knew this all quite well. She wished she was not such a burden to the group, yet still, she refused to dye her wings with mud. Instead of supporting her, the chameleons abandoned her, claiming she would be nothing but a burden. The butterfly wept by a similar ravine to this. As she cried, she noticed a brown moth floating above her. She instantly became very jealous of its simplicity. It was born with the ability to fade into its surroundings, but she was not gifted with this highly valued attribute. Just as the butterfly debated dyeing her wings, a predator flew above her. She was quite put off by its presence. The bird made direct eye contact with the butterfly. The butterfly was sure she would perish. But just then, the bird opened its beak and plucked the brown moth from the sky. It left the butterfly alive. What the butterfly did not know was that her bright wings resembled that of a poisonous toad. The bird thought that if she tried to consume the butterfly, she might also die. Imagine if the butterfly had dyed her wings with the mud by the ravine. She would have perished. Instead, she lives in the rainforest. She is marveled by all the creatures who lay eyes on her. Now, can I ask you a question? The woman asked. A friend of mine once said that it is better to ask a question than to ask permission to ask it. That's the beautiful thing about questions. You can ask them all you like, and the person can either refuse you an answer or answer you, but you have the right to ask it. I'll just ask it then. V, what does your name stand for? The woman asked. I don't know yet, I replied. V, you strike me as an artist. People fear artists. Witches were the strongest women in the village. They practiced medicine, and yet they were killed in the witch hunt. Why? Because people fear the powerful. We cannot look into the sun. It is so strong it will blind us. People are blinded by those who radiate strength, but without you radiating your light, the world couldn't function. What's your name? I asked the woman. I don't know yet either. You don't know your own name? I asked. What do you go by? How do people address you? My mother hasn't given me a name yet. I'm sorry, I said. It doesn't sound like a great mother. Oh, no, on the contrary, I love her. She just doesn't love herself. She doesn't trust herself to name things or people. Maybe you could give me a name. A name? I echoed back, astonished by the request. You want me to give you a name? Well, naturally. Well, I began, taken aback by the request. I know from experience that not many strangers would lend an ear to another stranger, especially not one in distress. It makes most uncomfortable. I would call you affable. But I know of many affable people who would still be too intimidated to help a stranger like me. Empath, maybe? Though that might not do you justice. I pondered my option for a moment. Since you don't have a name of your own, I will call you Angel. I like it. Angel it. And why? Because there is a good quality to you, and to me, you seem angelic. I'm not sure why, but you seem perfect. I like it. Angel it is. Angel, what do you think my name stands for? I inquired. Let me answer your question with another. What do you stand for? Angel posited. I don't know yet, I admitted. Then I suppose you should figure that out first. This will be the last time you see this view. We gazed into the night, admiring the view in quiet. This will be the last time you see this view for a little while, Angel said. What do you mean? I asked. Rather than respond, Angel pointed to the stars. You left your dreams up there, Butterfly. Fly up and find them. If I knew how, I would have. But the problem was, I did not. I wanted to ask, but I just as desperately wanted to avoid sounding ignorant. One more thing, said Angel, flashing a smile at me. May I recite you a poem? I feel like even if I did refuse you would still recite it. But before you do, can I ask you a question? You asked permission to ask a question? The angel retaliated. I ignored the stubborn remark. Why are your eyes so familiar? To you or to anyone? Angel asked. To me. They look familiar, I responded, staring into her eyes. Likely because they are. Time for poetry, Angel insisted. The moonlight had absorbed my tears. I sat on the edge of the bridge and listened to Angel's poem. Stars and sun, she stated. Stars flicker and shine. Their essence is dazzling and beautiful. However, as magnificent as they seem, their hours are limited to the night. Eventually the sun outshines them, these distant handsome stars, until all that remains is the clear blue sky, the sky tomorrow day offers so eagerly. Let stars be consumed by the overbearing light. Your light is too dim to light your path. Let the rays of the sun provide clarity to the dark nights that stars only flicker. Stars are stunning, but they are only ever just that. Stars and sun differ only in one sense, by distance. Do you understand now? It's not the stars you should strive for. It is the sun. I then knew what I must do. I would pack my bags. A little bit of a fast forward in time. My mind wandered to the icebreaker question we would ask ourselves as kids. If you only had an hour to pack up your things, what would you bring? I extended it too, and it could only fit in one backpack. The backpack I selected was large in size. It was gray and could fit quite a bit inside it. I decided I should start with the necessities. Clothes, money, a toothbrush. I had to be selective. I once read about a wanderer who only wore black jeans and a t-shirt. He did this so he would not have to pack extensively. I also packed a lot of black clothing. Packed 3 pairs of jeans, 6 black t-shirts, undergarments, a couple of PJs, and my red leather jacket. Sorry, just wanted to hint to something. Sorry, that was stupid. Let me continue. This I could wear, and it wouldn't take up any space in my luggage. Something was freeing about selecting for myself of what belongings I could bring or leave behind. I didn't have to bring any shirts. I was gifted but didn't have the guts to return. I could bring the things I wanted. It was freeing in a sadistic manner. I also decided to bring my songbook and passport. This was a necessity. I wrote songs in distress. I also brought my laptop. Lastly, I brought a book. I read in The Alchemist that if you brought a book with you, you could trade it for another. So, I chose to bring a battered copy of Wuthering Heights. It was my favorite book. Maybe another would also find pleasure in the read. I looked around at the things I packed and felt privileged. I was fortunate enough to be choosing what I should take. Others don't get to choose. When you pack with the intent of to travel for longevity, you consider less what you will pack and more what you will leave behind. I left a lot behind because I was an optimist, and I knew I would return someday. I just wasn't sure when that day would be. 2 things I refused to take were both my mobile phone and any photographs. Photographs were for people who lived in the past. The very act of taking them was an attempt to preserve the past. I lived in the future. It made little sense to me why anyone would want to live in the past, even if one had an incredible past. They could learn from it still and reconstruct the future to be even more incredible. I didn't take my phone because I did not want to be reached, nor did I want to reach others. I took one last look around my room. I cried many nights into these pillows. I laughed with Seal and cuddled aimless in this space. I took many phone calls, looked out into the streets from my windowsill, saw so many stars from the view of my bedroom window. One thing I was sure to pack were my glasses. I could not get very far without them. I also wore my baptism necklace, my silver watch, and my gold earrings. I was religious, and I was gifted these items in my youth. I figured I would be a reminder of my past. Not because I wanted to live in the past, but because the past might return to me in my future someday. When I walked to the bottom of the stairs, I saw my mother waiting for me in the living room. She also packed for me. She handed me a bag of canned goods and a comforter. I accepted the canned food, but admitted to her that the bedding would not fit at the back of my bike. She followed me to the driveway and was teary-eyed as I inflated my bike tires. My bike was bright red to match my jacket and shoes. My mother looked at me once more and asked me where I was going. I told her I was not sure. "You don't have to leave," she admitted to me. "You just need to apologize to your dad." "No," I retorted. "I have to go." She already knew. If I did not leave now, then I would have lost myself. If I lost myself, it would not matter if I had a comfy bed to sleep in and a roof above my head. If I lost myself, I would have nothing. Just as I mounted my bike, I looked across the street. Realist Mom looked back at me and shook her head. She could smell the sea salt in my hair, and this time, I could too. "V, you're trouble," said my mom, quite hurt. "You need to learn how to let go of the past." She was always telling me to let go. I was never entirely sure what she meant by this. Let go. Of what? I lived in the future. I didn't hold on to the past. I knew she wanted me to learn how to forgive. That was the problem. Forgiveness only worked when another person had demonstrated some effort to change the circumstance. How could one forgive when another did not show any desire to be forgiven? I never regarded stubbornness as a negative quality. If one was always passive, then nothing would change. I never quite understood why persistence was considered a positive trait, but stubbornness, on the other hand, was considered its negative counterpart. Could one be persistent without being stubborn, or stubborn without being persistent? If that were the case, then I suppose I was both. Two sides to the same coin. At least it was a coin of some value. "Will you be back?" "Maybe." I saw this did not satisfy her. "Promise me you will come back someday." She rephrased. "I promise you will hear from me," I returned. "I promise to write. I'll promise to write. That is all I can promise right now. I will write. When I leave a new location, I'll write. And I will go back and pick it up. I'll write and you can send a letter back to that return address, and someday I will go back to pick it up. Better still, I will message you online. I will bring my laptop. If you can't promise to return, I can't promise to write back," my mother said. It was a valid remark. "Okay," I finally gave in. "I'll come back someday. I'm not sure when, but I will." She embraced me one last time, and a silver tear slipped from her cheek. "I will miss you." Leaving the past behind is not easy when you always assumed it would be a part of your future. I never considered myself a nomad. Not from lack of want, but I could never smell the sea salt. Did not realize I was lost in the familiar terrain until the tornado. When I did mount that red bicycle and cantered it through the winding neighborhood, as if it was my steed, and rode it down the downtown into the country road, I knew then that the wind had settled. I noticed the wind currents above me slow to a stillness. I knew then that the tornado had subsided. All right, so that was Chapter 3, Tornado. So, thank you very much. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Check out my Amazon book, Dream Catalyst, Amazon.com. Again, link to purchase in the description. If you subscribe and turn that little bell notification on, you'll get a notification when I upload next week, Monday at 6 p.m. For Chapter 4. So, thank you!